came about through Minig Yisrael, and we say that Minig Yisrael Toirahi, which means that the customs of Yisrael are Torah themselves. The content, that the name of the Sedra signals the code for the content of what that Sedra is about. And you need to know that firmly, because the mistake is often made by people who don't want to accord the right importance to what we're just learning. The soft option is to say, oh, well, it's called the first couple of words, it's taken from the first couple of words of the Sedra. So, Bereshis bara Elokim, it's called Bereshis. But I'll prove to you that that's not right out of TOLDOT, because the words for the opening of this Sedra and the words for the opening of Parshas Noach are exactly the same, except with a different name. Noach starts off Eilu TOLDOT Noach, and the Sedra is not called TOLDOT, it's called Noach. And this one starts off Eilu TOLDOT Yitzhak, and it's not called Yitzhak, it's called TOLDOT. So the Rebbe explains that there must be something internally consistent with the name and what follows. So I don't know how TOLDOT is translated really as generations. That's the usual English translation. I don't know what it is in Street Hebrew. Ronan, how would you say TOLDOT?
You know better.
So I think it means generations. It means the unfolding. It means and.
I'll tell you exactly.
I
can tell you exactly.
And so what the Rebbe explains is that the clue is that we're going to be balancing various energies, and these energies, I'll just take you to the end in the beginning so you know where it's going. We're going to be balancing the energy of Esrusa de La'ela and Esrusa de Lasata. That means a flow from above to below, and a reaching up from below to above, a clawing down of the energy from below to above. That's one of the concepts that is really introduced in a repetitive way, and why it's introduced and why it's repetitive, explains the Rebbe, is that we are now talking. I've been trying to choose sikhs lately where the Rebbe is trying to show us that the Torah is dealing with each individual individually. So the journey that we're going to be making tonight through Parshas TOLDOT is really a sign, a light for one's own journey, for one's own development. And the energies that we're going to be talking about are repetitive and need to be fit into the context of how a Jew wrestles with his nefesh habahamis and his nefesh elokis. He's got his animal soul and his godly soul. Now, I was explaining to, I had to speak at the school to the kids, and I was explaining for Rosh Chodesh Kislev. I was explaining to the kids that there were two main areas where the Rebbe turned on lights on different pathways. One was the whole issue of miracles. Let me just summarize this. There's series of letters between the Rebbe and his father-in-law, the Frierdiker Rebbe, on the question of miracles. Why? Because miracles in Chabad, until our Rebbe, were pasnish. The Rebbes didn't talk about it. They played it down. If there was a miracle evident in some way or another, the Rebbeim would always try and explain that there was a natural reason, and they tried to get out of the fact that it was a miracle. They tried to find excuses to explain the miracle as a natural phenomenon. And the Rebbe took issue with this with his father-in-law and said that he believed that at this time in history, namely when the Jews were being shoveled out of the ovens of Europe with no dignity left, with no sense of self-esteem left, and Jews were crushed and broken, that one of the easier ways back to observing the mitzvahs and doing the mitzvahs and learning Torah was to show them that there was a spiritual world at the same time. And in fact, the Rebbe continued with that opinion throughout his lifetime, and the miracles that came out of 770, as everyone knows, were just by the billions, and to the point that every family that had anything to do with the Rebbe on a regular basis have a whole storehouse of them. I have a storehouse of them. I've written a book on the storehouse of them. But why? Because the Rebbe showed us that for the ordinary schlepper who knew nothing, like I didn't know anything when I started, that to make them aware that there was a whole spiritual dimension to their lives. And most people who don't learn Torah, and don't learn Chabad Hasidus in particular, have no feeling for this. They don't know that there is a spiritual dimension in their life. Whereas in fact, the reality for a Jew is that he has two souls, as we've learned, a nefesh habahamis and a nefesh elokis. Most people spend their lives in contact with and in touch with their nefesh habahamis, their animal soul. They understand the signal that they're hungry, they understand the signal that they're thirsty, they understand the signal that it's time to procreate. They understand that very well. In terms of their nefesh elokis, in terms of their neshama, in terms of their soul, that's a much more difficult thing to access, and it requires training and it requires practice. And to do that, the Rebbe taught many of the aspects of the soul, as well as those miracles. So first of all, he opened the door with the miracles, and then showed people through the Sikhs and the Maimorim how there is in fact a completely different level of existence concurrently available to every Jew in his physical existence. So, understand it like this. Let me give you an example. Let's take an example of fear. A person, there are two ways to look at fear. One is a car's driving straight at you, and you jump out of the way, and you jump out of the way in terror, and you're shaking for 10 minutes afterwards, right? That's the nefesh habahamis. That fear is healthy fear. That's normal, healthy, hardwired into your nefesh habamis. But let me ask you a different way about fear. We believe that Hashem created the world. We believe that that creation is ongoing. We believe that it's ongoing. In other words, we learn in Tanya that Hashem is bringing the world into being every microsecond. That doesn't mean the whole world generally. It means every single atom, every single molecule, every single hair on your head, every single piece of dust in the universe, every grain of sand, bringing that into existence every moment. And we learn that that means that he must have control. Because if he's bringing it into existence, it means he's controlling it. Now, if you accept that Hashem is bringing everything into existence and controlling it, you're on the way to accepting Hashgacha Pratis. If you accept Hashgacha Pratis, then there comes a point where if you're advanced enough, where is there room for fear? What's there to be frightened of? If you tell me that Hashem's recreating the world every moment and he's directing everything in it, he's directing that car, he's directing everything, there is a level where you can approach your life so that you understand that it is actually illogical to be frightened about anything. Right? Now that's the neshama working. That's not the guf working. That's the nefesh elokis working, not the nefesh habamis. The nefesh habamis says, "There's the car. I've got to get out of the way. I'm scared." Or Palestinians coming at you with a knife because of what we're having to live through at the moment. And he's coming at you with a knife. What are you going to do? Sit down and say, "Voracious and every year is sorry and Hashem is bringing everything into existence, and therefore He knows best, and I'll sit here and the knife won't touch me." Now I tell you something: if you're betoken and strong enough, the knife won't touch you. Yeah. But most people haven't got that level of betoken, and they are going to obey the signal from their nefesh habamis, and that's how it's supposed to be. But one thing that everybody needs to understand is that there are two dimensions all the time. Every moment you're alive and breathing and existing, there is a physical dimension. There's no doubt about that. And we have to work with that. And it's important to work with that because we have to make a diribatoidim, so we have to elevate that physical existence. But at the same time, for goodness sake, one has to understand that there is a whole spiritual perspective which, to be accessed, requires focus and practice. But if you have it, it's a different thing altogether. You have a different life. And I think everybody will attest, everybody who's learned Hasidus repeatedly for any period of time, they will attest that since they started to learn Hasidus, it's like colored television compared to black and white television. It's a completely different perspective. You have a different perspective on your life. So, in order these energies interplay at various levels. One is Esrusulula, Sato Esrusulula, the blessing from above to below and clawing down the blessing from below to above. Now, another one is various emotions. There are 6 emotions in Malchus. Then there are 3 intellectual levels as well. So we have 10 spheres, 10 what's called spheres. I won't waste time on the terminology, but of the emotions, after the intellect, after the 3 intellectual ones of the emotions, there are 2 main pathways. That's why the body, because everything in Gashmis is a reflection of Ruchnius, of spirituality, that's why you have a left-hand side and a right-hand side to the body. And that's why some poor ignorant people thought that as the right-hand side corresponds to Chesed and the left-hand side corresponds to Gevurah. My father, Oliver Scholem, for example, who was left-handed, They made him learn to write right-handed in school in primitive Poland. They made him write right-handed, and to the day he died, he couldn't write left-handed. And yet, if he did anything else, he picked everything else up with his left hand. So
Happened here.
huh?
Even in Belgium.
I'm
School.
I'm sure. So that's because the teacher was ignorant, and I'm sure they meant well, but it's a very stupid thing to do. But it's where does it come from? It comes from a misplaced lack of understanding of Hesed and Gevurah, as though Hesed, which means kindness, and Gevurah, which means strictness and discipline, as that Hesed is good and Gevurah is not good. Now, that's wrong. Hesed is good and Gevurah is good, but we have to know how they have to be combined in exactly the same way as the guf is good and the neshama is good, but they're two different things, and you have to know how to combine them. Certainly, when an ordinary person's alive, they're combined naturally, but they also are not combined naturally because most people's focus is on their nefesh habahamis, not their nefesh elokis. That's not true of a tzaddik, that's not true of a spiritual person, but it's true of most people schlepping along in the street. Now, also, another set of energies that this Sedra hints at, the Rebbe explains, is that it's possible to effect change in two separate ways. One way is where somebody stays still and lights a fire, and that draws people to warm their hands and feet on that fire. That's one way. Another way is to go out and sell your goods. Right? Not wait for the business to come to you, but to go out and sell, knock on doors and sell. And that's a different energy. Now, the opening words of this Sedra are very curious. And every commentator talks about it. So, and I'm sure you've heard this 1,000 times, but we'll do it again. It says, Va'elu toldot Yitzhak. These are the generations of Yitzhak. Remember, Yitzhak is the son of Avram. Elu toldot Yitzhak, ben Avraham, the son of Avraham. Avraham hoilid es Yitzhak. Avraham gave birth to, or was the father of Yitzhak. So you hear the sentence that this is the story about Yitzhak we're going to be learning, and Yitzhak was the son of Avram, and Avram was the father of Yitzhak. So every commentator asks the same question: why do you need the second statement? If Elu told us Yitzhak ben Avraham, there's nothing more to talk about. You understand? Yitzhak is the son of Avraham. What do you need a second sentence to say that Avraham gave birth to Yitzhak, or was the father of Yitzhak? And they all ask that question, right? And Rashi brings the answer from the Gemara that Sarah was barren, and both of them were old, and it was, of course, impossible for Sarah to give birth. So when the Malachim and the previous Sedras came along and gave her the bracha, she laughed, and there's a whole issue there of whether she should have laughed or shouldn't have. But at that stage, Avram was, whatever he was, 90. He was 99 when he had the bris. So I don't remember. I should have looked this up before the shir. I don't remember whether this was after the bris or before. It must have been after the bris. So Avram was 100 years of age, and she was something similar, whatever she was. So she was way past childbearing, and she was 90. She was 90, yeah. Okay, good.
10 years ago.
So, but certainly she wasn't naturally available for childbirth. So they said that when Avram went, many years before, when Avram went down to Mitzrayim, because there was the famine, and Paro took his wife, and he had to pretend that his wife was his sister, and the box, and the whole story. At that time, Avimelech, the Paro, impregnated her. So, in order to show that that is not so, Hashem made a miracle. This is the Rashi, quoting the Gemara, that they had the same face. They looked almost entirely exactly the same. One older than the other, obviously, but the same face. So that would deal with the scoffers who said that Avram wasn't the real father. So what does the pasuk mean? The pasuk means that indeed Yitzhak was the son of Avram, but why was the second time put in that Avram was the father of Yitzhak? To explain to the scoffers that it was definitely him and not Avimelech. That's the standard pshat of that meaning. Now, if we get time, I'll just sketch it in now in case we don't get time. But I invite you to be thrilled at how the Rebbe learns. When the Rebbe learns this Rashi, he skips straight to the next level, and the level after that, that Yidden, Jews, are connected to Hashem through the chain Yud Kei Vav Kei. The nations of the world, Gentiles, are connected to God through Shem Elokim, through nature. So the issue isn't whether Avimelech as a human being impregnated her or not. The issue is a much deeper and stronger argument, which is that was it possible for her to become pregnant naturally? No, it wasn't. So it must be spiritually, miraculously. So we're back to what I started with, that there are these two perspectives. In all of this learning, we're going to be having to understand these two currents. That one current is our life spiritually and one current is our life physically. And would be an enormous mistake if the takeaway was that the physical is not important or not as important as the spiritual, because that's wrong. At the end of the day, we are briefed by Hashem to be His shluchim, to make a dira b'tavtoinim, to make a dwelling place for Hashem in teva, in nature. So the main game isn't the heavens. The main game is the earth. The main game is physicality. But you can't elevate the physical without accessing the spiritual. Because if you don't access the spiritual, you just remain an animal the whole of your life. I don't mean that critically. I mean nefesh habahamis. You get up in the morning, you have a shower, you have your breakfast. I'm leaving out saying Moedei Ani and Nagel Wasser and going to shul and davening because I'm talking about the people who live like animals. They get up in the morning, they have a shower, they have their breakfast, they go to work, they dodge bullets all day, they come home at night, they want to enjoy their wife and children, relax a bit, have a l'chaim, watch television, whatever they do, but it's all gashmias. And that life, which is entirely gashmias, is impoverished. It's deeply impoverished because you're missing half the life. Now, the opening words of this Sedra are designed to capture your attention, not at the Pshat level. I'm talking now at the Kabbalistic level, at the Hasidus level, designed to capture your attention to the fact that when Avram is not only the father of Yitzhak, Begashmias, physically, but the second part is also true. What the Rashi is really explaining is not just that they, of course that's true as well, but not just that Hashem made the miracle to stop people thinking that his father was Avimelech, but to make a Jew understand that a 50% component, whatever the measurement is spiritual, is miraculous. We, Am Yisrael, have to understand that our existence is a miraculous existence. It's just nonsense. There is 8.5 billion nefoshos on this planet. We are lucky if there's 14 million Yidden. The percentage of 14 million to 8.5 billion is less than 1%. It's point, whatever it is, of 1%. Israel is smaller than Hobart. You know that?
No.
Yeah, Israel is smaller than Hobart.
What, population-wise? or-
No,
Physically.
in size. In
Physically.
size.
Wow.
And there are and so these people who are less than point something of 1% of the world's population are in the paper every second day about something or other.
Yeah.
That we have a history of anti-Semitism. Why does anyone care about 14 million people in the world's population? Why does anyone care about Israel? It's a tiny little dot on the planet. And the world is obsessed with Israel and obsessed with Am Yisrael. Why? Because there is a spiritual dimension to our existence. You want to examine what that spiritual existence level is, so we will do it. It's not a superiority. We've been through this. It's a responsibility, but there is a definite difference to the way we can live. And the truth is that through the 3,500 years since the Torah was given to mankind, our history, as everybody knows, has been a terrible, painful history. And nothing has got in the way of Am Yisrael High. Nothing. And we overcome everything, and we have overcome everything always, and we always will overcome everything. And this war at the moment, we will win this war. It may be very painful, but our history is very painful. But we will win it. Why? Because Am Yisrael High. We are a miraculous existence. But for goodness sake, part of that existence, unless you want to be deliberately impoverished, is to tap in to what's making our existence so miraculous. And that's what these currents are discussing. Okay. Let's start particularizing it. Avraham is Chesed. He is pure Chesed. He's kindness, and not only is he kindness, but he's kindness without Gederim, without limitations, without boundaries. And that's not necessarily such a good thing, because I'll give you an example. You have a child, and the child wants an ice cream, you give the child an ice cream. The child wants a second ice cream. Now, there's a question of whether you give it to him. Child wants a third ice cream, fourth ice cream, fifth ice cream. There must come a point where you say no. So unlimited Chesed isn't hesed, it becomes a dereliction of duty. Avraham was pure hesed, so unconditional, and he had Yishmael, he loved Yishmael, and he had Yitzhak, he loved Yitzhak. Yishmael misbehaved, he still loved him just as much. When his wife said that Hagar had to be sent away, he was heartbroken at the thought of that. So he goes to God and says, what does she want? God says, listen to her. Mm. And he does. Why? Because he recognizes that you can't just function on Hesed. There has to be a curb to that. Now, Yitzhak, on the other hand, is pure Gevurah. He is, first of all, he's a holy, because he was supposedly going to be the Korban for the Akedah, although that's a misunderstanding, but we won't go there now. But he was for a period, a moment, he was an offering to Hashem, and because of that, he had to live a different kind of life. For example, when he wanted to go to Mitzrayim when there was a famine, Hashem said, no, you can't leave Eretz Yisrael, you're a holy Korban, and because you're holy, you can't leave holy soil. And so Yitzhak had stayed all his life in Israel and couldn't leave. And now you'll understand this, that there are a couple of things interplaying with this Avram and Yitzhak. That the whole point of Torah is that it is a manual for your and my life as Jews. So if we have Eilu Toilus Yitzhak, we're not excluding Avram from that, because the next sentence says that Avram was the father. But both Yitzhak and Avram, in other words, both Chesed and Gevurah, have to be in play. One is no good without the other. That combinations of both. Let me give you an example from practical life. Let's take an example from kashrus. Everybody knows that Jews have to separate meat and milk. Everybody knows that you can eat meat after milk, but you can't eat milk after meat. Huh? I'm oversimplifying this, but there are waiting times, etc. But fundamentally, the separation of meat and milk is that you can have meat after milk, but not milk after meat.
Don't you have to worry about how many hours?
Well, there are times. Chabad is 6 hours. There's some people that are 4 hours. It's not important. The issue is that we don't combine the two. But everybody is agreed that the combination that's treif is that the milk follows the meat. Why? So it's explained in Hasidus. It's simple. If you understand any Hasidus, you'll understand it immediately. Milk is Chesed, and meat is Gevurah. And if you want to interact with someone you love, your child, your spouse, your friend, then there's going to be times when you have Gevurah, and there's going to be times when you have Chesed. But if the Gevurah comes first and it's followed by the Chesed, it's treif. If the Chesed comes first and out of the Chesed you introduce the Gevurah, it's kosher. You take a parent's relationship with a child. In a healthy, functioning relationship, the father or the mother has a guaranteed belief in their child that they love the child. So when they discipline the child, the discipline is coming after the chesed, not before the chesed. When you have a cruel jailer in Long Bay Jail, and he's a sadist, So he'll tell you that you're going to do exercises, you're going to do 150 push-ups, and they're for your benefit. But and there is a benefit for doing it. But what's the motive? The motive is gevura, not hesed. So that's that's an example I'm just giving you from kashrus to understand the dynamic of two things. You have to have the meat and you have to have the milk. But the question is in what order, and the question is in what combinations. And so when we're talking about these introductory words of Ram and Yitzhak, and the TOLDOT, this is the generations of this, the Rebbe is explaining to us that we are reading about our own personalities, our own characters. And for those personalities and characters to be spiritually healthy, there has to be an acceptance of Chesed and an acceptance of Gevurah and an understanding of where to channel which and at what time and when is the correct time to do that.
So Yaakov was both?
Yaakov was Tiferes. Yes, a combination. So, but just while we're still on Yitzhak and Avram, the Rebbe also explains that there will be times when there are tensions between Chesed and Gevurah. And there is a difficulty. You don't know what to prioritize. So the wording of this pasuk tells you that you have to prioritize kindness. And there's that famous story, I'm sure I've told it in the shir before, and I'm sure I'll get hunted down by someone that's listened to the tape and ask me why I'm repeating it, but somebody once came to the Tzemach Tzedek and said, Rebbe, I don't understand. When children say, I hate you, 5 minutes later they're playing happily. And when when the grown-ups say, I hate you, they keep their word. They don't invite them to their bar mitzvahs or their hasanas or their levayas, and then they don't talk to each other for the rest of their life. Why is that? So the Tzemach Tzedek replied that children would rather be happy than right, and adults would rather be right than happy. Mm-hmm. And that's a very deep understanding of what needs to be prioritized. It's more important to be kind than right. This is a lay down mazir. There's no contest. If you've got the issue of being right or kind, Torah tells you to be kind. And if you're not right, so what? But if you're not kind, there is a so what. The opposite to kind is cruel. Okay. Another aspect of these differences. When Avraham Avinu was kind, he got his hashbah, he got his flow, his energy, milamala lamata, from above to below. Now, and when Yitzhak, because he is Gevurah, so his energy comes from below to above. The thing that one needs to understand is that both of those energies have their positive and both of them have their negative. The positive of above to below is that it reaches further and indiscriminately. So when Avraham wanted to be generous and introduce people to the fact that there's a God, and he opened his tent for people to have food, the midrash that the people came, and if they didn't bench, then he charged them, and if they did bench, and blessed Hashem, They got the meal for free. So he wasn't particular who came into the tent. And the whole story with the three Malachim, they're Arabs. They're Arabs with dust on their feet and who are worshipping the dust on their legs, so which is avodah zarah. So the thing about Hesed, unbridled Hesed, if it's milamayla lamata, from above to below, is that it penetrates much further and its light is brighter, but it doesn't last. Doesn't last. Whereas if it's generated by a man below, and that effort is made by man below, his success lasts. His success lasts forever. So Gevura, if it's milamata lamaila, is going to last. Chesed, if it's milamata lamata, it's beautiful when it happens, beautiful when Hashem appears to us on Mount Sinai, beautiful when we witness a miracle, as the Rebbe wanted us to witness, beautiful when you can see something happening as a result of a bracha from above to below. And you see it, if you look for it, you'll see it in many, many, many aspects of your day, every day. It's a matter of practice. However, it doesn't last. What lasts is you making an effort and overcoming an obstacle and triumphing over your nisoyan, and that builds another brick in the Dirva Taktoinim. So we come to another part of the Sidra, which is very puzzling. And it's all about digging wells. Right? I tell you, you read this first few times, you wonder, what is the Torah talking about? Avraham Avinu dug wells. And then the Plishtim came and filled up the wells. And then Yitzhak dug wells. And they didn't come and fill up the wells. The wells were successful. What is the Torah talking about? So the Rebbe explains that he's talking exactly about what we've been learning. It works like this, that Avram's wells, in inverted commas, his influence on people was the influence that was brought milamala lamata, from above to below, and therefore it didn't last. His wells were stopped up, they didn't last. Yitzhak's energy was milamata lamaila, and therefore it did last. What does it mean that it was milamata lamaila? What's the difference between Avram's wells and Yitzhak's wells? It was the same well. But with Avram, he piped the water in. I'll give you, it's a mashal. I'm not sure that this was the mechanics, but imagine that you want to have a well to water your flocks. You want to have water to water your flocks. So there's no water, so you pipe the water in. And if the piping system is efficient, and you've got a receptacle which is efficient, you're going to have water for your cattle. But what happens? Sooner or later, that gets neglected, the pipeline gets neglected, or it breaks down, or it gets blocked. And when it gets blocked, there's no more water. That's a mashal for what happens milamala lamata. But that's not what Yitzhak did. Yitzhak went and dug until he found the water that was already there. That's a real well. Where the water is already there, it's just got to be uncovered, it's just got to be found, it's just got to be dug out. So the positive of Racham's chesed and kindness and niceness is that there isn't much effort involved. You give somebody a smile, they appreciate it. You give somebody a pat on the head, they appreciate it. You give them some money, they appreciate it. Yitzhak had to dig what was already there and reveal it. It's much harder. But once that's been done, it's forever. When you become your Yitzhak and you dig your well and you find your water, you find your spirituality, you find your neshama, you're never going to lose that. Whereas if you, like we did, go to 770 and you see the Rebbe, I cannot describe to you, the videos do no justice whatsoever to the overwhelming response that we had in front of the Rebbe. It's just, first of all, he had Hadras Ponim. You know, Hadras Ponim means a light off his face. The light doesn't show in the videos, right? But you call my wife down, talk to anybody that went to the Rebbe, the Rebbe's face had a light shining on it, as if. And you walked away from a moment's interaction with the Rebbe, a bigger, stronger, better person, with less anxiety, more certainty, more self-esteem for what's good. But how long does it last? You get on the plane, you come back to Sydney, you meet the crooks in business every day, and within 5 minutes it's gone, right? But if you then do what the Rebbe tells us to do and learn his Hasidus and learn it regularly and dig regularly into your own neshama, the results are forever. And there's no one, I don't know anybody that learned a ton of Hasidus who walks away from it. I don't know anybody who's done that. His life isn't made better because of it. All right, so there's one last thing. We have to serve Hashem, and this is a bit confusing. And again, it's back to Avram and Yitzhak and Elu Toldos Yitzhak. We have to serve Hashem with what's called love, ava v'yira. So that's usually translated as love and fear. But yira, although yira does mean fear, I mean, in Hebrew, its ordinary word means fear. But it doesn't really mean that in the context of Torah, of ava v'yira. I'd say a better translation of that is awe. That you serve Hashem out of love, but also out of awe. And it's wrong, and it's bad hinuk to teach children, and everybody's not the age on their passport. The Rebbe is fond of saying that, so I'm talking about spiritual children. If somebody who doesn't know much Torah, don't know how to learn, it's a very easy way to go wrong to learn that we have to serve Hashem with fear. There's no fear, it's awe. So, and the Chabad Hasidus following not following anything. Chabad Hasidus explains that there are 4 levels to this ava v'yira, this love and awe. There's a lower form of love. That's when you love something. You love a woman, let's pretend. And when you love that woman, there's a very big ingredient of you present, because you're the lover. And you're conscious of being the lover of the object that you love. There's a higher level of love, where you don't figure in the equation. You just love. You love your God. You're not part of that equation. You're serving your God, or take a parent, a child with a parent who adores the parent, and the parent asks the child to do something. The child does it out of love for the parent. And the child's not playing any part in this. His own personality. Then you have the lower level of yira and the higher level of yira. The lower level of yira is where you are frightened, back to fear again, of the consequences. You're an intelligent person, you've learned some Torah, you've learned a lot of Torah, and you know that if you do this, it is going to have negative consequences, either spiritual or physical or both, in this world or the next, however deep your learning is. So you don't do it. Because you're a frum yid, so you don't do it. But you're doing it because of the consequence. And then there's a higher level of fear where you don't do it because you would be embarrassed in front of your God to be doing something contrary to his ratzon, to his will. You'd just be ashamed. Why? How could you do that in front of your God? And you have a perspective that your God's present. It's not that he's not looking. He's not going to have amnesia. So Hasidus explains that it goes like this. There's the four things are four steps. The lowest step is lower level of love. The next step is lower level of fear. The next step is higher level of love. And finally, the top step is higher level of fear. And this is a whole shir on its own. I can't spend the time on it because we've got to finish. But those four steps are explained by the Rebbe in the way that this originating pasuk starts. That Elu Toldos Yitzhak. So first of all, we start with Yitzhak. That's the lower level of fear. And then son of Avram, that's the level of love. And then again, Avram is the father. So Avram's mentioned again. That's the higher level of love. Father of Yitzhak. Yitzhak is mentioned last. And so they're the pillars, they're the various steps. But putting it together, it's in what the Rebbe is trying to show in these sikkahs, or what the Rebbe does show. It's not that he's trying to show what we're trying to understand what the Rebbe shows, but what the Rebbe, some of the signals that the Rebbe is showing is that in our daily life, there needs to be both focuses. There needs to be a focus on Gashmis, certainly, but not just to be gratified by the Gashmis, but to utilize the Gashmis to elevate it into Ruchnias. But equally, there has to be a focus on Ruchnias, because otherwise you live the life of an animal. What's the good of that? What's the good of being born to and everybody has a lot of tests in their life. They don't have enough money, they don't have enough health, they don't have knackers from all their children. Who wants to go through all of that? Why? Unless you're going to produce something from that, something worthwhile from that, what's the point of it? So we don't want to live like animals. So the Torah tells us, Elu Toldos Yitzhak. This is how you do it. You've got to balance love and fear. You've got to balance milamala lamata and milamata lamala. You've got to balance chesed and gevura. You've got to balance dark and light. And at the end of the day, that's all because you understand that you are empowered by your God to make a derivative between it. And Am Yisrael, little Am Yisrael, 14 million people in 8.5 billion, in a country so small, the whole world is obsessed with us. And why? And we have to understand that we have to be an example. We have to be a light to the nations, and we are. Anyway, so that's it. L'chaim, guys.
זאת שרות אסתר דירה, חשופה היה